It's an example of the spiritual variables that you would consider that most people wouldn't.
Sure. Well, one example that a colleague and I worked on, he had initiated this project of trying to gain some information about what explained the success of microfinance entrepreneurs. Those folks who get small loans, particularly in developing countries. In this case, we are in Kenya and Indonesia. We're working with some groups there. And we were trying to understand what makes them successful, because obviously that's our hope, is that they would use that money and help themselves, out of poverty. But so we had the kind of standard questions that related to how much money they were going to receive, what was their social network, what was there, and we categorized each of this as a kind of capital. So a financial capital, a social capital, a human capital around their education or training, even a psychological capital about their personality or level of optimism. So we had a number of these factors or variables in research were described that we expected would explain part of the success of these microfinance entrepreneurs to sell their products, to be innovative, and then also to attract and retain employees. And what we found out is we had actually another variable that we put in there called spiritual capital, which really was a measure of faith centrality or faith maturity, like how important was their relationship with God? Did they consider God to be present in their work? That was kind of a vertical set of questions. And then there also was a horizontal set of questions about, does your faith impact how you treat other people? Does your faith motivate you to do certain behaviors that are pro-social? Anyways, this measure of spiritual capital, after we accounted for the financial capital, the human capital, the social capital, the psychological capital, spiritual capital still predicted or added to our variance explained. That's kind of your research lingo there. But and we were the ones who included that, or other studies would have left that out. And actually, it after all those things were controlled, it still was a significant predictor of those important variables about how many, their sales, their people that work with them, and also how innovative they were. So, that's an example of just adding that extra element that maybe somebody else wouldn't add, and we explain more of a phenomena that we're interested in their understanding.
Well, what does that mean? Like the people that were of faith, they did better with the loans, they paid them back more often? Like what specific metrics did you evaluate?
Yeah, those three metrics were those ideas of what were their sales, and those were, kind of standardized, related, to what they were selling. In other products, they standardized this kind of, was a measure of sales, a measure of how often they kind of changed their product, or how many different kinds of products they sold. These typical, these were microfinance folks who were, running vegetable stands or things that were relatively straight and simple, but also how many people they employed to maybe sell the vegetables or go get the fresh water or sell the soda or pop that they were selling, So we were looking at those kinds of performance metrics: sales, innovations, and number of people that work with them. Certainly the company had, some data about paybacks, but we didn't actually look at that one. So, and I'm sure they did, because that's important to keep the money coming back in so you can fund more. But that wasn't the focus of our study.